Hello, welcome back to another Zoidcast. I think we're on to episode 5 now. It's very exciting. And we've got another special guest joining us today. Hi, I'm Tom. And then with us today is Rowan. Rowan, would you like to introduce yourself, tell everyone why we've invited you along, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think I've been invited because I've won Best Newcomer of the league last year. And I guess being relatively new to the hobby, I can give a perspective that's different to some of the other people you've had on who have been playing this game for nearly a decade or something like
that. Yeah, pretty much. So, because you're a nice guy, it's all right. Thought we'd invite you on. But yes, so Rowan won the Best Newcomer in the GBHL. So that award is basically given out to someone who went to less than 3 GBHL scoring events in the year before. Did you go to any before in the season?
I can tell the story of how I got into the hobby in a few minutes. Actually, maybe we'll drop back on that. But yeah, I played 1 in the season before.
Oh, okay, and then came back and smashed it the next year.
It was a lot closer than it looked at the end. Yeah, Ryan Gregory had the lead kind of 1 month before the end of the season, and I needed some good results to overtake him again, and luckily did get them in the end.
I think it was the war at Reading that really kind of tipped it over the edge, wasn't it? That's the one that kind of went, oh, hello.
Yeah,
hello.
I needed a top 8 to retake the lead, and kind of luckily finished first in that, and had some pretty tight games which could have easily not been wins. And then that put the pressure back on him for the league finale, that he then needed to finish first to retake it, and he nearly did, to be fair to him. He only lost 1 game.
Nice.
So yeah.
So before we dive too deep into it, if you are here and you have been enjoying the last cast we've done, feel free to pop a little like on the video, do the subscription stuff, ring the little bell that's in the corner somewhere. There'll be a button down there somewhere, hopefully, that says subscribe, and then just helps us out a little bit. But yeah, now that that's done with, Rowan, could you tell us a little bit about how you got into midlife in general, the hobby, and if you've done any like wargaming experience stuff before?
Yeah,
that's right.
So my history of like wargaming is basically none at all. I think when I was maybe 13 or 14, I painted, I don't know, 10 Catachans, I think they were, and 10 Tyranids, and maybe like 5 Space Marines, and that's kind of the entirety of my experience. Never played with them. And then it was pretty much 2 years ago, I think it was around September 2019, it would have been. I saw an advert for Age of Sigmar, and I kind of thought, oh, that might be something I could be interested in. If they've done a new rule set, maybe it's been done pretty well or something like that. And I mentioned this to a friend at work, and he said he had all his Lord of the Rings models from when he was a teenager. And I kind of floated the idea that we could use his Lord of the Rings models as proxies for Age of Sigmar models and test out the Age of Sigmar system. And he then went and got all his models from his parents' house. And when we were setting up, he kind of said, oh, look, I've got the old Lord of the Rings rule books, and they're pretty good. So why don't we just play Lord of the Rings? And I said, yeah, okay, sure, let's do that. So we played a game using the old rules of Lord of the Rings, and it was pretty good fun. And then by chance, I then saw that they'd actually re-released the Lord of the Rings rule books as well, pretty recently. So then it seemed we've got all of his models and there's some new rule books. So why bother looking into Age of Sigmar? Why not get into Lord of the Rings? So he had a Rohan army, an Isengard army, and a Moria army. So I was very lucky that at the very start, he basically said, like, you can have all of these. They're not yours, but long-term loan type thing. Feel free to paint them, because about half were painted, half weren't. And at that time, so this was back in sort of September, October 2019, my wife went away for work for 3 months. And I saw at the end of that 3 months that Throne of Skulls was kind of my last free weekend. And I managed to get a ticket for that. And I then spent 3 months learning how to play and painting about 40 Rohan horses, and just built up a 1,000-point army of Rohan. And I think before Throne of Skulls, I'd managed to play 4 proper games. Other than that, it was just kind of playing against my brother, who didn't know how to play either. So it was blind leading the blind. But in sort of the local Birmingham community, I managed to play. It might have only been 3. But 3 games, and then I was in Throne of Skulls, in at the deep end, 5 2.5 hour games, and my brain was absolutely fried at the end of that tournament. But yeah, I was hooked.
Nice. How did you finish in Throne of Skulls, just out of curiosity?
Oh, it would have been maybe 2 wins, 3 losses, something like that. So
So
yeah,
you didn't kind of turn up and instantly win everything?
no, definitely not. No, a lot of effort has been put in to get to the point where I am now. But I think at that tournament, I played Damien perhaps, and I think I played it might have been David Clubley, although that might have been the GT a few months later. And I just didn't know who anyone was because I'm new to the scene. And back when I started, it was really hard to like find all the sort of information and all of the podcasts and stuff, because just Google searching didn't really come up with much. And it was only once I found the GBHL Facebook page that I was able to then sort of discover all of this content and start reading all of these blog posts and listening to all these podcasts. But
yeah, we've had a few people say something similar, and we're talking about it with Harry a little bit about how kind of over the last year or so, the kind of content scene around Middle Earth has just seemed to have blossomed really nicely. There's a few channels which kind of popped up and shot up in people watching and their viewer numbers and stuff, which has been really good to see. It's really nice for kind of the whole scene. I will put a link down to the GBHL Facebook group down below. If anyone doesn't, it is a great place to go hang out, even if you're not from the UK. Go out and hang out, and there's always people talking about tournaments. I've just put a load of stats up from the tournament we're doing next week of like model count averages and what armies are going and things like that, so you get a rough outline. But yeah, there's loads of cool
stuff like
stuff.
that. Yeah, events where you put out all the stats beforehand. I'm a sucker for.
I love it. I love the stats.
Yep.
I'm trying to like set a precedent by doing it. If I do it myself, hopefully someone else will copy it. But yeah, stats. Love stats. So cool. Your first event, Throne of Skulls, which if anyone doesn't know, is held at Warhammer World every year. It's like 1,000 points, isn't it?
Yep.
And they have a heavy weighting of like hobby scores and stuff as well. So you get a lot of points if you turn up and you've got a beautiful army. You kind of get into character and things like that. You can get yourself more points, and it's kind of a whole celebration and a hobby rather than just a serious competitive event, which is quite nice. If you want, you can check out Harry Parkhill. He did a whole thing where he took a load of ruffians and dressed up as a ruffian. No, Sharky dressed up as this year and went to not Throne of Skulls, but Throne of Skulls, and just generally had a great time doing that. And I think Damien won it, didn't he? Is dressed as Treebeard. Oh no, Kalman won it.
Kalman won it. Yeah, Damien came second.
Second.
There's 1 point in it, I think.
Dressed as Treebeard, playing a full end army, like just having a great time. So yeah, great little event. But yeah, and then it came around to the next year, and you were ready to go.
Yeah, pretty much. So I managed to rope in my old housemate's boyfriend. So I was playing with him kind of locally and managed to convince him to start getting an army, and we go to a few tournaments together. So I think we went to a 1-day event in Leicester, and then we did go to the Warhammer World GT kind of that March. And this was still when we were, effectively complete rookies, not really know what we're doing, but starting to get that kind of competitive drive to, like, every time we play each other, we'd look at what mistakes we're making and kind of challenge rules and go and read the rules and try and understand them as best we can, but still very much not doing that well at events. And then COVID hit.
Yeah. I think that's about where we were in our kind of local group as well. Like we started off with 1 or 2 people. We played a few games, and then it just kind of we went to our first, I think, 2 tournaments we went to, and then, like you say, COVID hit and everything kind of got locked down and you weren't playing anymore. But did you kind of take a break from the hobby? Did you spend your time painting some beautiful armies? Did you get really
painting
into
and beautiful
tabletop
armies
simulator?
aren't 2 words that go together with my hobbying. Mine are very much.
I've played against your dwarves in Hands of Your Brother, and they're quite nice.
They're nice until you get too close. They're nice colours and their contrast, and I put lots of effort into the bases. I've enjoyed the basing for stuff like that. But yeah, so as you were saying, I didn't really take a break. I think maybe in between lockdown 1 and 2, I had a couple of months where I can't even remember what I got into, but another computer game or something, and had maybe a 2-month pause. But other than that, I've kind of been constantly chipping away for the last 2 years. And yeah, I got into Tabletop Simulator a bit, and mostly just with kind of my brother and my local friend and another mate. So there were 4 of us, and we kind of did a mini tournament and things like that. So yeah, it was good utilising Tabletop Simulator to try out new armies and sort of get a feel for other aspects that are easier to play on Tabletop Simulator than on the table.
We were quite lucky in that I'm on my own and one of our good gaming mates is on his own as well. So when we were allowed to start bubbling up, we basically had nothing to do but to sit and play against each other. So that was quite good. We ended up down a really deep hole for a bit where we were just playing against the same armies over and over again. It's quite fun. But and then first event back out. Where did you go? What was your first one?
Oh, great question. Let me just open up a list which will have them in. And I can actually, I towards the end of the season, I kind of retrospectively tracked all my events so I could see how I did and see which armies I was taking. So it looks like, okay. So then there was a local Birmingham event, which I managed to sneak into in between, was it kind of October of the first year? So I think there was maybe a month where tournaments were allowed again before they then got locked back down again for that Christmas. So that was just kind of a local at Borden Brum, kind of in North Birmingham.
Yeah, they're quite good, the Borden Brum ones, aren't they?
Yeah.
I've heard nice things about them.
And yeah, it was a pretty good tournament to see kind of where I'd got to over that first lockdown. They did it in a pod system, so it was kind of on day 2, the top 4 people were put in a pod together and all playing each other. And I ended up in that top pod, which then meant I got some pretty hard games on that second day, which then I lost a couple and it dropped me down the rankings. So I think I finished 7th at that one. And then I didn't have another tournament until Into the Dragon's Lair, which was the Not Into the West.
Not Into the West, yeah.
Just July this year, pretty much. So so going through that, I'd only played 5 tournaments and before July this year. So it was still very much pretty heavily weighted for the last kind of 6 months of the season, where I got all my tournaments in and stuff like that.
And then at what point did you go, this is it, I'm going to really, or at any point did you go, this is it, I'm going to really push for this? Or did it just kind of go,
after that very first Throne of Skulls, I sent a message to, I can't remember if it was Matt King or Ali King, basically saying, I was reading through the GBHL stuff, I've just discovered this, just to check, I've just been to Throne of Skulls, am I still eligible for Best Newcomer? So that kind of puts the spin on it that from literally my first tournament, I was like, oh, hang on, there's this thing I can try and win maybe. That would be a good target. Let's set that as the aim. So the mindset from day one, and I mean, it's people approach the hobby in very different ways, but I'm very much competitively driven, and all my motivation is, it sounds awful when I just say this bluntly, but it's all about like trying to be the best and winning and all of that side. So from the start, I've always been trying to improve and get better with that kind of competitive drive rather than the hobby thematic side.
It's very interesting because I think at that point, I was actually top of the Best Newcomer for a very brief period of time because I turned up to my very first tournament and won it by accident in London. So I was like straight up there, and then I didn't do anything else and just slowly dropped back down. But someone was like, "Oh, you're top of the Newcomer." I was like, "I am. There's a thing." And got very excited, and then tried way too hard. Tried to play better than I am, and fell back down again, which is a shame. But yeah, so right from the very start, you were thinking about it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Nice. And then Lair of the Dragon came around. How did that go for you?
Really well. Yeah, that was when I, in the prior few months, I'd come up with this theory that dragons are the best model in the game. And I was having some discussions with, I don't know if you know Sam Harbison Sharby, who writes some blog posts from Australia. He puts out some pretty good content. It's against, let me just check what he calls it. I think it's called Against All Odds.
Against All Odds is definitely one.
Yeah. It's the Against All Odds blog post that Sharby puts out. So yeah, big plug to him. His content's great, and I've spent quite a lot of time recently having discussions with him. But he'd put together an article about dragons and whether you should take the tough hide upgrade and all of this. I don't want to dive into too much detail, but I was looking at the maths and running the numbers, and 4 base attacks on the dragon. I was there like, this dragon is as unstoppable. So at Dragon's Lair, I was like, I'm going to take a dragon and a cave drake as my evil army. And then for my good list, take a Rohan and Lothlorien alliance. So I have kind of completely different armies. That one's this kind of 2 monsters, and one's this as many Rohan and Lothlorien as I can fit in. because you could take, it was optional whether you take a good and an evil. And they had these secret objectives, the same as Into the West. And I managed to get all 7 of my secret objectives over the weekend. And I ended up finishing 5th, which was a pretty cool result. And winning the Trixie Hobbits prize for getting all 7 of my secret objectives.
Nice. You've been one space above Lee Robbins, channel regular.
Did he finish 6th at that one?
I think he was 6th at that one. Yeah. He was either 4th or 6th, one of the two.
Yeah, because both of you were there. Because I remember watching your, you did like a review that evening of how your day 1 games had went and stuff like that.
We did, yeah. It was quite fun because he beat Ali game 1, which is quite fun. Just to really throw a cat amongst pigeons. That was his first game at his first Middle-earth tournament. He got Ali and beat him, and was like, right, well, that's it.
Yeah, that tournament was interesting because there were a few names there that I kind of recognised at this stage because I was still fairly, I guess, new to the competitive scene there. But there was kind of Ali and Dave Farmer and stuff. And on day 1, I think both of them lost a game or so and were quite far down the rankings. And I remember having this reflection, being like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like I kind of assumed that they'd be doing a bit better. No, Callum Edians was there as well. I played against him game 1 and managed to get lucky and scrape a win. But then day 2, all of them finished kind of top.
I think Ali,
area.
Farmer, Edens all lost game 1. It was a bit kind of like, well, okay, here we go.
But yeah, I found that a very interesting reflection at the time of that kind of, these people must be doing something very right, that even though they lose game 1, they still end up finishing in the top few of the tournament anyway. And I found that quite interesting.
I think if anyone's not been to an event before, if you lose game 1, it's definitely not the end of the tournament. If you're going to lose any game, lose game 1. Because then you kind of, it's that kind of submarining theory, isn't there? If you lose a game 1, you get a slightly easier game 2 and 3, and you can kind of pull it back up into the podium. And I think we've all been there where you've been top table and lost at the end, and you drop down to like 4th or 5th, and it's been like,
yeah. Incidentally, both of the GBHL hundreds that I've ended up winning, I've won very much from behind. Like I often win my games with quite small margins. Just because of, I guess, like, I'm not that confident in trying to get big wins, so I play quite defensively or try and just kind of edge small victories. So I ended up, this was at Warren Reading and the league finale, basically being the bottom of all the people who had won all their games, which then meant I was getting I was avoiding lots of the big names until the final round. And I think that definitely fed into kind of lucky draws, lucky matchups, and kind of ducking and weaving a little bit just at the bottom, sort of nipping at their heels. And then rather than kind of the top players who will definitely play each other in round 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, which was an interesting reflection. I definitely got lucky with both of those wins.
I had the exact opposite. Was it Lord of the Imps, where I won my first game 12-0 and my second game 10-0. And I just sat on the top table trying to ride through, and then eventually lost it, and then it just all spiraled down because then I was the top of the 4 and 1 people and stuff, and it was
that's
just like,
the thing. Yeah, even if you then lose like game 3 or something, you're then still going to have a tough matchup.
Yeah, it was tough. Cool. So Leather Dragon went quite well. And then did you go to Into the West as well?
No, I couldn't make it. I couldn't make the new day, unfortunately. So the next one I went to was down on the south coast. There was a little 1-day event called Battle of Bellegarde, which looked pretty good fun. So I went and visited my brother in London and went to that and finished 2nd out of 16 there, but that was only a GBHL 80. And then I had the London GT the week, or the month after, actually. This is now September. Finished 4th there. I think I only lost to Aaron Pullen, who is pretty much my GBHL rival. I think I've played him 3 times at tournaments where kind of whichever of us won was then went on to kind of podium, and he's got the better of me 2 or 3 of those. I've only beaten him once. To
be fair, there's much worse people to have as your rival. He's a lovely guy.
He's a great guy. Yeah.
Nice. London GT, and then because that's the one I played your brother twice, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And won 1, lost 1. So
Yeah, that's his first and only ever Lord of the Rings tournament. It's the only one I've managed to rope him into. But yeah, whenever he comes up and visits, or I go and visit, we sneak kind of 1 game in. But he's still very, very much a rookie, and sort of hasn't got the time to commit to tournaments the way I've been able to.
Yeah, it's quite a time sink, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we're on to the business end of things, I think, aren't we?
Yeah, so it was at this point where I was thinking I was still aiming for Best Newcomer. I kind of convinced my wife to let me go to as many GBHL 100s as I could, because up until this point, all of the other events I'd been to, apart from London GT way back when I just started, were GBHL 80s. So even though I'd kind of come second and fifth in a few of these, my overall league standing was still pretty low just because of the cap on the points at GBHL 80s. So I entered all 4 of the remaining GBHL 100s and kind of knew that I needed to podium at one of the 4 to kind of have a good shot at getting Best Newcomer. And the first one I went to was Battle of Unnumbered Tears. And in the run up to that, I went to Nottingham and had a couple of practice games against Jasmine and kind of tweaked some lists against her and things like that, and got some input from her, and came second at Unnumbered Tears, which helped a lot for the fight for Best Newcomer.
Nice, yeah, that's a big chunk of points to pick up all in one go, isn't it?
Yeah, 95, yeah.
And into, what's our Unnumbered Tears? Was it Reading?
That's Mansfield, and then after that was Scouring of Cheshire.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, and it's probably worth noting at this point that it was that event where I really kind of found the armies I enjoyed using. Before that point, I'd been dabbling with bits of Rohan and bits of Isengard, but I kind of discovered this alliance between Rohan and Lothlorien, using Galadriel as the leader and bringing in magic and some Wood Elf Sentinels and Fight Six Pikes, then allying with Rohan and using Grimbold to then get a front row of Helmingus. So as you can see, very much a power gaming side competitive angle, but the sort of people that I was sort of practicing with and discussing lists with are people like Jasmine, who are equally writing kind of the strongest lists they can, and that's kind of the way we would just approach tournaments and the game, is that we're there to sort of bring competitive lists and try them out against each other, which I know lots of the community are kind of frown upon a little bit. And my general rule of thumb is, if it's a GBHL 80, I won't take kind of filthy broken lists like that. But if it's GBHL 100 and there's lots of other sort of big names going, I'm basically just going to take the strongest list I can, even if there's no theme.
That's the entire point of the 100, isn't it? It's the 100s are there to be the most competitive thing you can be, and especially people up in the top 10, top 20 of those 100s. Like you want to really try. And the 80s, I mean, they're great fun, and by all means try. But I mean, I did it. I took quite a sweaty list of my first one, and then realised it was probably a little bit too tuned. And I think I won 3 of my 4 games 12-0, and was kind of like, oh, okay, I might need to rein that back in.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't really fun for the guys I was playing against. Bless them, but yeah, it's all right. We fixed it. We learned.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Cheshire.
Yeah, so Scouring of Cheshire, in my head, well, mathematically for Best Newcomer, the only way Ryan could then overtake me after I'd come second at the one before was if he'd finished in a top 2. So at this point, I was kind of like, the odds of him finishing top 2 aren't that high. There's kind of 80 people there, and some pretty big names. Sort of Jay was there, Dave Farmer, Ed Ball, name a few. Jasmine was there, and they're all trying pretty hard for their podium positions for the overall ranking. So I took the vanquishers before I fully realized how stupidly broken they are. And in my head, that was just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to take this new list that I've never used before and just try and have a bit of fun. And then Ryan went on and finished second in that, which then turned the tables on Best Newcomer. And suddenly I'm there like, okay, I've only got 2 events left, and I now need to finish pretty high up to try and overtake him. So that was a really interesting twist to that Best Newcomer race at the end.
How were the vanquishers, just out of curiosity?
I ended up winning 3, losing 3. They're similar to how everyone has kind of described them, that for most matchups, they're just ridiculously strong, and there's very little counterplay. And what counterplay there isn't enjoyable. It's basically just like throw all your models at them and they'll all die, and you just hope that your opponent rolls badly. And that's not really that fun. And if you're on an objective scenario, there's so much magic control. They can still, in the right hands, do a lot on kind of the final turn to command people away and Sorcerer's Blast the right person and dictate when the game ends so that they can still get the win. But some of the matchups, I had hold ground against someone who was, I think, fairly hungover from the night before. And at that point, kind of 5 models against 50, it's very hard for the vanquishers to do enough in the time you've got. So that one was a loss. And then I had another game against the Last Alliance, which turns out is a pretty good counter to it with Isildur with Fortify Spirit on him, and the ring then means you can't target him. And sorry, Glorfindel with Fortify Spirit on him, and Isildur with the ring, so you can't target either of those very easily with magic. So that was a pretty tough matchup as well.
Nice. I haven't seen them in the flesh, but I do keep hearing about all these like horror stories of having games where it's like 2 hours and you basically sit there and roll dice and hope your opponent fails and stuff.
Yeah, like it's got to the point where unless you specifically build a list to be able to deal with them, it's unlikely you're going to have a fun time. I think my preference would be that they were just banned from competitive scene, just because I don't enjoy the dynamic that they create. And I think the Black Riders are just about okay in the kind of level of power they've got. Whilst it's a very different game and they can just black dart your leader and kind of kill them straight away and stuff like that, they do run out of resources at just about the right time. So I've played them twice at tournaments and won both games, and they've been kind of tough, but just about balanced, that you can kind of see, okay, I can see how there's a way to get around this. Whereas the Vanquishers, there's none of that. They don't run out of steam. They just keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, the Black Riders, I played them once and beat them once, but it was kind of like on a technicality. It didn't feel right. It wasn't a fun time.
Yeah, I wouldn't be sad if Black Riders and Vanquishers just got sort of banned from most tournaments. It's
I just have to slide that minimum model count up to like 5 or 6.
I think that's the way to do it. Is if you're going to set a 700-point tournament, you just put the minimum model count at a number which allows most of the other legendary legions, like Breaking of the Fellowship and Thorin's Company, but would just make it so the Vanquishers aren't viable.
6. 6 is the number, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Even then, the Black Riders can come, but not but they can only just come, I think, for that. But yeah. So yeah, you've got 2 tournaments left. You've got Reading and you've got Stirling.
Stirlingshire, the league finale. Yeah. So yeah, I go into war very much with this mindset of I need to come top 8. That was the target for the weekend, and I'd done the maths, and it meant I could get away with losing 1 of my 6 games. But if I lost 2 of the 6, there was no way I'd finish top 8. And it was good v evil. So you've then got the weird shenanigans that happens with kind of the 2 parallel draws where you then can't play someone who's also got a good army and things like that. And I got quite lucky as well that in the first round, I think Jakob and David Farmer, so 2 of the strong players there, drew against each other, which then meant that if I kept on winning, I was never playing them because they were kind of against people slightly below. So they were both trying to play catch up, and it meant I could kind of stay above them. But again, I was winning my games by quite small amounts. It was using major minor tournament win condition. That I was able to also avoid playing the people who were winning all their games by huge margins until the final round, where I was against Aaron Pullen, and we had this very tense command the battlefield with him having Rivendell Knights and me having a Horde of Moria, and luck was in my favour, and I managed to just about take the win there, and secure my first GBHL 100 victory, which was awesome.
Is that your first win over Aaron as well?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, first win over Aaron, so that was a big one. Yeah, at that point he'd kind of played twice and he'd battered me in both. So it was nice to finally, get the win at just the right time.
Nice, and then on to
Stirlingshire.
Stirlingshire.
Yeah, again, and I couldn't relax because there was still a chance that Ryan could overtake me if he won the tournament. And also Jasmine really wanted me to finish ahead of David and Jay. because if either of them finished first or second, it was going to knock Jasmine from second down to third, down to fourth. So she was still a little bit worried that there was one specific combination of, I think, Jay first and Dave Farmer second would then put Jasmine out of the GBHL podiums. So she was helping me prepare for that tournament and helping me tweak my lists. And she even lent me some of her Moria models, a couple more Prowlers and a couple of Warg Marauders and stuff, just to help me have kind of the strongest list I could for that. And yeah, I managed to win all 6 of the games there, which was great.
I love that idea of kind of her sneakily kind of like trying to buff you up a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was great. It was in both our interests, because obviously it's great having someone to bounce ideas off and sort of theory craft with. And she's got
Was that public knowledge? Do people know you're doing
that? Amongst
As they do now.
Those sort of people, like I think Ali. I think I was at the Battle Companies event a couple of weeks before war, and I was playing Ali, and Jasmine turned up to give me the models, and I think Ali basically said, "So Rowan, are you Jasmine's bitch?" And I was like, "Well, she's helping mentor me and stuff like that." And he was like, "Okay, that's a yes then." So yeah, pretty much Ali definitely knew. But
you just like, you know, when you watch the F1 or something and you've got that second driver who's just slowing everyone down behind.
Yeah.
You just keep them back away from me for a second while I go over here and win.
I mean, the thing that Jasmine was annoyed that at Cheshire, where again she was wanting David Farmer to not win, to try and make it more likely she'd finish second in the GBHL. I did play him on top table on game 3, and I lost to him. I had the Vanquishers, and it was contest of champions, and it's a scenario where the Vanquishers should have an edge, but David played a fantastic sort of strategy. I made a couple of minor mistakes, and he tabled me in 2 turns. So then Jasmine was there, just like, "Rowan, you've led him through," and she was kind of blaming me for not stopping him. I think in the end he had to play Vanquishers 3 times in a row.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, which was crazy. But then at Stirlingshire, I kind of got redemption by finishing. I didn't actually have to play Dave or Jay in the end. They played each other in round 5 and round 6 again, and I kind of snuck through and just I had Will Champion in the final round, but yeah, managed to stop either of them.
They
winning.
drew against each other, didn't they? So
one, and then the other one.
Oh, okay.
So
I couldn't remember how it ended up happening, but yeah, I remember
it was because
twice.
Yeah, because I was on the same side. I was using the same army as Dave, who won round 5, which then meant I couldn't play Dave. And Jay was then the best player using an evil army still. So it was still Dave first, me second on the rankings, and Jay, I think, third. But Jay then had to play Dave again because Dave and I were using the same armies and couldn't play each other.
The old good versus evil logistics headache. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, again, so that went in my favour. Similar to war, where the draw was just kind of the ideal for me to have matchups which favoured my armies a bit.
Nice. So it sounds like kind of all towards the end, you kind of settled on a list that you found worked for you, worked quite strongly, and then once you kind of got the hang of that one, it was just kind of up to the top.
Yeah, exactly. Minor tweaks each time. And for the evil, because there's lots of these tournaments, I'd take a good Anton evil. I was using Moria, and I kind of touched upon this fact. I thought the dragon was the strongest model possible, and I started off trying to make a dragon list work. And then I very quickly found that if you want to win the tournament, the fact that you can have a bad roll 10% of the time, if that happens at the wrong time, you lose the game. And I think Jasmine's written an article kind of back in the first lockdown, I think, looking at whether you're better off having higher model count or lower model count and putting all your eggs in one basket type thing. And that just lots of these top players write lists where they can fail with certain components, and they've got enough other tools in the toolbox to make up for that. So unfortunately, the dragon is no longer in my Moria.
Think of him as like list. a 5-1 list rather than a 6-0. Like, yeah, he'll get you there and he'll win you lots and lots of games. But it's that one time, and when you play at a proper tournament where it's 6 or 7 games, there's that one time that you can fail will happen. It's the same with someone like a Balrog. Like, eventually, you're going to whiff your roll. He's going to lose. You're going to die. You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Do you mind sharing briefly, like a very quick overview of what's in those lists?
Yeah, of course.
Like in general, because you've got, it's a Rohan Lothlorien goods and a Moria evil.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'll start with the Rohan Lothlorien alliance. So it's a green alliance, so you keep the army bonuses on both of them. And my list building always starts with Galadriel and 2 Wood Elf Sentinels and somewhere between 4 and 6 Gardo Galadrim Court. Then I bring in Grimbold and 12 Helmingus, so that's Warriors of Rohan, who cost 1 extra point to be strength 4. They've all got axes, and they've all got throwing spears as well.
So they
I've
can all
got
be
front
strength
line.
5.
Yeah, exactly. They can be strength 5, and they're all going to have elves from Galadriel's warband giving them spear supports. So they're also going to have fight 5 or fight 6 if the pikes are there. And Grimbold is incredibly rubbish in a pure Rohan list because he has to go 2-handed, and he's pretty squishy at defense 5 and like 2 wounds, 1 fate. But if you can give him 2 pikes, he's now fight 6, and there's now 3 dice when you include the banner reroll to win the fight. And he now becomes powerful enough that he can kill pretty much any enemy hero in a single turn if I'm piercing striking 2-handed, and he's got 3 points of might to make sure he wounds, because each of his wounds does 2 wounds if it goes through. And you can combine that with Galadriel transfixing enemy heroes. They now can't strike, and I'm fight 6 with the pikes, and he is now a 60-point brutal assassin. So that's kind of why that aspect works so well. And then once I've built up his warband, I then bring in some sort of cavalry from the Rohan to give me some mobility, and that would either be Theoden and a few Royal Guards, or towards the end I was using Theodred and some Royal Guards, because again he's pretty high risk but also very high reward, and if you can unleash him at the right moment on the charge, he's getting 4 attacks, and whoever he then sort of knocks down, he's then getting 8 dice to wound, and he gets to re-roll all of those failed to wounds. So again, he can kind of instant kill someone like Elrond in a single turn, because 8 dice at strength 5, wounding on 5s, re-rolling all failed to wounds is pretty good odds to take someone like that out. So yeah, so I'd have Theodred, and then if I had the points to do so, I'd then bring in Aldor and Gamling. So Gamling would then be my banner, he'd sit with the line, and he's there to call the marchers if I need them as well. And then Aldor is then there to call either heroic accuracies or heroic moves and get the might back the next turn. So that's kind of the ultimate, I guess, like cheeky part of the list is, I think in my final game against Will Champion, Aldor called 6 heroic moves in a row, getting the might back every turn with Gamling. And Will Champion had a pure Easterling list, and we both started off on about 12 might, but the fact that I've effectively saved 6 points of might where he's then had to counter heroic moves or let me go first, suddenly I have such a might advantage just from utilizing that combo of Gamling's banner that gives me a lot more tools to try and do
Same thing
stuff.
a lot of people do in the Defenders of Helm's Deep Legion with Halef, isn't it? Where they put Halef and Gamling next to each other, and Halef just calls. So you've essentially got 2 points of might to spend on your shooting then, so you can kind of just pick the right thing to kill. It's very irritating.
Yeah, it's I played my brother at Christmas, and I let him use my winning list from Stirlingshire, and playing against it, I was actually like, this is such an oppressive list, because it's I think it towards the end, my final kind of version of it, it's very well rounded, that it's got blinding light, it's got magic to shut down big heroes, it's got enough numbers and the throwing weapons to deal with horde armies, it's got the mobility, there isn't much it doesn't have, which is I think why it was doing so well at these events, that it can deal with all the matchups. And now I've been using it for kind of 6 months, I'm pretty experienced with how to like form efficient lines and sort of get the people shielding at the right time if you know you need to sort of buy some time for objectives and things like that. Yeah, so definitely one I think we'll start getting some more play next year when people start picking up Grimbold and bringing Helmingus out with Galadriel.
I saw Grimbold was sold out at one point recently. So
I don't think that would be credited to me.
That's all your fault.
Yeah, I do remember quite early on having discussions with people about Galadriel being my leader, and lots of people saying, oh, Galadriel was a rubbish leader and all of this in blog posts I was reading. I was there like, no, she's not. She's an excellent leader. Unless you get Contest of Champions, she's exactly what you want as a leader, someone who can stay back and stay safe while influencing the game and shutting down their big hitters and stuff like that.
Nice. And then your evil kind of Moria list.
Yeah, so over time that expanded to start off with Ashrak and loads of Venomback spiders.
Yes.
And then kind of tweaked it a little bit, and I was a bit hesitant to use Druazag, but then I started using him, and he's actually a lot better than I initially gave him credit for. And then Jasmine talked me out of, for Stirlingshire and War, taking sort of Ashrak and Druazag combos. So in the end, for Stirlingshire, my 800 points, I brought in Spider Queen and had Druazag, but not Ashrak. So I think I had 54 goblins. I had Durbers and Groblog, so they've both got strike and defense. I've got the Spider Queen, and I've got Druazag to then do Enraged Beast. And I think I had 2 Bat Swarms and maybe 5 spiders and a couple of wargs. And Enraged Beast spiders are scary. Let's just put it that way. They suddenly become fight 7. They've now got 4 attacks. If the opponent's trapped, 8 attacks, re-rolling 1, strength 5. Again, they're almost doing the same thing Phaedrid's doing on the charge.
They are. That's basically what I've been building over Christmas. So, and I didn't even know you took it. I'm excited now. I'm going to go look at what the exact makeup of the list was. But I have
some stuff through.
Prowlers and Groblog, and then the Spider Queen. I've been using her a lot anyway. But I found myself with Druazag and an Ashrak, and I was kind of tinkering with that kind of combination. It's very, it looks disgusting.
Yeah, it's good fun, and the thing I've really enjoyed about using Moria and in that variety is, even if someone dies, no matter who dies on my list, I don't really care, because if it's a Bat Swarm, I've got more. If it's a Spider, I've got more. Even if it's Durbers, I've still got Groblog who can do the same thing. And it's just frustrating for the opponent to play against, that all of my monsters are threats, but equally they're not that big a deal if I lose them. So it's a tough thing to play against. And
the thing I found in my test games is that while they can all be threats, you don't really know which one is a threat this turn. So you can't screen out against every single Bat Swarm. You can't hide from every single spider, because any single one of them can come at you, which is
it's great fun to use. It's great fun to use.
Nice, brilliant. So we've spoken an awful lot about you just personally there. I think probably a little bit longer than we probably should have, but it's good. It's very interesting. I like it. It's we should probably crack on with the main kind of
the actual content. We were kind of
now that we've spent more than half the time we were going to talking about that. So the main reason we were going to come and talk here was about heading to events. It's the start of a new GBHL season. There's an awful lot of people who are looking to compete for the first time. And obviously, as someone who started competing for the first time and seemed to do okay at it, we were wondering if you had any kind of tips and things. I'll weigh in with some tips and things that I think we picked up from our first year of doing stuff, and see where we get to. So we'll try and be as brief as we possibly can.
Sounds good. We'll try and make it like a rattle through them all.
Yeah.
So I think we'll break them up into the 3 sections, kind of before the event, the night before, I think is a nice one to talk about briefly, and then also at the event itself. So I think
starting from the very, very beginning, finding an event and stuff like that. How do you pick an event to go to?
How many points is it worth for the GBHL is the first question. But no, in all seriousness, I'd just be looking at events local to you. I think pretty much every GBHL event is going to be good fun. There's always nice people. The community is great. That if you're unsure, you probably will end up with a fun event no matter which you pick. And whether it's got loads of people or not very many, I think they bring different dynamics, and both of them are great fun. So pretty much just find a weekend you're free with an event that's not too far a drive, go for it.
I know loads of people who played their first ever games at GBHL events, had a great time, came back. You'll learn so much, especially if you get drawn against someone who's quite good. You learn an awful lot from that one game, and then come back next time and smash it. Sweet event. Picking an army. How do you choose an army?
Yeah, so I started off with, as I was saying, I had my friends kind of Rohan and Isengard, and it was just that's what was available to me. So I just used those for my first few events until I kind of figured out exactly what I wanted to buy and collect on my own. So again, for the armies, if you're not sure, just everyone always points at the starter set, the Pelennor Fields, and it's just whatever models you find. Maybe just go look on the marketplace or on eBay for some secondhand stuff, and if some stuff comes up for a good value, go for it. And I think that's one of the great things about Middle-earth strategy battle game is there isn't a single strongest army necessarily, and also none of them are particularly weak. So you can get away with pretty much any list you fancy.
You can have a great time if you go and you buy a Pelennor Field starter box, and then you pick either Aemir or Durnhelm, the King of the Dead, and then like an orc captain of some sort. There's a million of them. Pick one of them. Now you've got 3 pretty solid armies that you can take and play with. They're all quite different as well.
Yep.
And just pick the one that you like the vibe of, I think, and then go from there. Do you like running with cavalry? Do you like running with special elite dudes? Yeah. Because I was messing around with all kinds of different lists to start with, and then you kind of work out. Turns out I like playing with hordes. I thought I hated playing with hordes, but now I'm a big like Goblin Town, Lake Towny type person, which is quite weird. Didn't know it was, but now we are. Who knew? Yeah. And you said you were playing with a lot of Isengard guys at the start.
Yeah, I there's nothing wrong with them. They're great. I just kind of stopped being inspired by them. So I just stopped using them fairly early on and started using other bits and pieces.
Do you have anything else that you do before?
Yeah, especially when I was going to my first events, and this isn't necessarily applicable to everyone. It depends how much time you've got and how keen you are. But reading the rule book in full made such a difference. And every time, I think I've now read it in full something like 4 times in the last 2 years. And every time I've read it, even now, there's always a new rule that I read and go, oh, okay, I never quite appreciated that. And especially when it's your first few events, just skimming through, just to even if you can't remember everything, because there's a lot, just remembering whether it was in there or not means that during a game you can go, oh, I think I remember reading something about this. I think it was in the cavalry section. Do you mind if I just have a quick look? And you go and go, oh no, you do still get the knockdown even if you countercharge me or whatever. So that's my first tip, is try if you can to actually read the rulebook in full.
And the FAQs.
And the FAQs.
There's so many people I play.
Tip.
Oh, is it? I was going to say, there's so many people I played who've never read the FAQs, didn't even know they existed, and you're like,
Yeah, it is a shame that GW don't kind of collate them all into one place and maybe even update the digital copies every now and again, because just the fact that we're now at the stage where to fully understand all the FAQs, you have to go and read something like 12 different PDFs, because there's the designer commentary and the errata for every different publication. And if they just put them into a single document, that would make life so much easier just to search for things. But yeah, again, if you know you're taking a monster or a unit who's particularly interesting, it's definitely worth just having a look through the FAQs before your event as well.
I always bring the Goblin Town section with all the Grinner, swap with me stuff and the Goblin King bits. I just print it off and bring it, because at some point it's going to come up and I'm just going to go, look, it's there in the FAQ. Have a look.
Definitely.
It's so much easier. Nice. Is there anything?
No, that's pretty much it for
deep in advance before going.
Before the tournament at a distance, that's all the stuff I've got there. It then transitions quite nicely onto the night before. And I think my top tip, which goes against, there seems to be this kind of, I don't know the word, how to describe it, almost pride in painting models up until 2 a.m. the night before an event. But my advice would really be to try and have your army fully painted well before the actual event.
How dare you?
Yeah, it's because these events, they're mentally, they're so tiring, especially when you're new to them. Just the idea of doing 6 hours of fairly intense war game where you're trying to remember all these rules and play strategy, it's exhausting. And if you're doing that on the back of not much sleep, it's kind of setting yourself up to make mistakes and be caught out. So as much as people seem to love doing it, lots of painting motivation only comes from events, and that's the only way I managed to get stuff painted as well. But it's very much kind of set the deadline to be Thursday night to get everything painted rather than Friday night. And I think that'll
I love it. But then, to be fair, I did go to a couple where I didn't paint the night before, and I had a great time, so it's all right.
Yeah.
I find as well, one of the things that, you know, when you're little and your mum always used to tell you before you go to school, make sure you pack your bag the night before. Doing that recently, it's changed everything. Get yourself a little bag and just start getting everything that you're possibly going to need in there well in advance. What kind of stuff do you take to an event?
So I've got a metal toolbox, and all my models are magnetized. And in that, I'll have pen, paper, super glue, sort of bottle of water will fit in there. All my models, dice, and then one of my tips I was going to mention actually is I've got all of these. Basically, they're bamboo skewers that I've cut to be 3 inches, 6 inches, 5 inches, 8 inches, and 10 inches as movement sticks. And I think they're a great thing for people to try and utilize in games. And I'll mention that a little bit when we're talking about sort of in the games themselves, because I think it's a bit more relevant there. But I've got those, and more recently, Dewey has some I don't know what to call them, backing away tokens or movement tokens. They're 3D
exactly
printed.
what he calls them.
Yes, yeah, and they can work so well. I don't know if it's probably worth just plugging them and putting a link to them below, because people are always amazed when I get them out. And basically, they're all 1-inch bases with a bit of a cutaway to allow you to stack them against each other in a line. So if you're trying to see if someone's got enough movement to go kind of round a corner or past someone's control zone, you can just get 6 of them out, and you can just figure out whether it can or can't without having to kind of bend a tape measure and saying, oh, I think I can, or that sort of thing.
I will happily link anyone to the Guardians of Wiltshire Facebook page. That's absolutely fine. I'll pop that link down below. Guardians of Wiltshire, Dewey, he's a lovely chap. He's lending me some boards for the table, for the tournament and everything. Nice. Yeah, jump on there. He's got some all kinds of useful cool kit. That just stops arguments, which is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. Especially lots of these decisions that when you're on top table stuff, it comes down to millimeters, and both you just say, okay, you're right. If we just check it, and we check it, and whichever way it goes, there's no issue. So yeah.
I've got some very makeshift old slotter bases with a bit of sprue stuck down the middle, so I can just kind of do that with my 25mm base instead of moving models. Good. And it's like, cool, can I fit through that gap? Ooh, do you reckon he'll fit in that hole there, and things like that without having to move the model? Because as soon as you move the model, then it's kind of throws everything out of proportion. Where did he come from? Where did he do?
So one other thing I like to do the night before is I write up the might, will, and fate for all my heroes, and it's good practice for your games anyway, to be tracking your might, will, and fate, and also your opponents. But the night before, if I know it's a 6 game event, I'll write out 6 pages of Galadriel, Grimbol, Theodred, might, will, fate for each of those, and that way I don't have to do it in between games. And it's hello, Cat's here. And I that's kind of almost one of my rituals now. Is the night before is I'm writing up my might, will, and fate and getting all that ready.
I don't know if this is the thing I've started doing. I don't know if it makes me sad or not, but whenever I use a might, will, and fate, I always write down what I've used it for as well. I don't know.
It's definitely a good thing to do. I don't bother. I just haven't got into a habit.
Too good for that now.
No. It's. I definitely recommend it, and it's something I probably should do. It's just, I mean, normally, especially with my good list, there aren't many things I'd be doing with them. Like I know that like Galadriel's going to be calling Blinding Light and maybe channeling it. And other than that, she's calling moves, and Gamling's calling moves, and other people are just using might to increase dice rolls and stuff. So it's there's not many people who I have to.
We went round and round for ages about, is March essential? Do you need this guy for this? And I was like, well, tell you what, let's find out. Went to a tournament, wrote down everything, looked back and was like, cool, I marched once out of 6 games. You know, turns out it's not in this list. It could be in someone else's, but you know, it's just a good way to like look back at what you've done. But yeah. And the other thing you mentioned, I just want to like pick up on, because I see a lot of people not doing it, but you said that you took a bottle of water in your box.
Yep. And snacks.
And snacks. The amount of people I see turn up, and I've done it, where you turn up to an event and you're kind of like living off coffee and cigarettes and sweets and things for the entire event. And you said it earlier about how, you know, it's 6-8 hours of hard mental thinking every day. And you just can't do it on, you know, you've got to have a proper food the night before, drink lots of water, and just generally look after yourself a little bit. Have a good night's sleep.
Exactly. Yeah.
They look on my mum. No.
That's everything I've got for the night before.
Yeah, just pack in, making sure we're ready. I can't think of anything else. Let's check the rules pack. I don't know if we covered that.
No, we haven't actually. That's a good point. I do always read the rules pack inside out, kind of a week before, 3 days before, a day before, especially for when you're writing your lists. If you're trying to be sort of competitive and things, it does make a difference for what the tiebreakers are, and also just checking the times of the events, when the lunch break is. Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoy about the Middle Earth scene is that all the events are slightly different. And we've talked about it a few times with both Ali and Harry actually when they've been on, is how the scene's quite nice because you go to 100 event, GBHL 100, what wins there isn't necessarily going to win the next one, because you've got things like Into the West secret missions, you've got the London GT where they had it was all based on VP differential, the scoring, rather than actually winning the games and things like that. And it just kind of, do I need to be shooting for maximum VP differential, or do I need to be focusing on this kind of different thing at the event and working out how you're going to maximize your tournament points?
Yeah.
Cool. So getting in the car or the train or however you like to go to events, how early are you setting off, Rowan?
So when I started off at these events, it would be kind of drive on the Saturday morning, and get up as early as I need to get up to get there sort of well in time and try and not be late, and then spend the whole drive stressing because I've got up at sort of 5:30 or something, being like, did I definitely checked I've got all my models, but what happens if I counted wrong and I'm missing like and all of that. But yeah, so I'd normally be driving quite early on the Saturday to get to these things. I live in the Midlands, so everywhere is normally within 2.5 hour drive, which is a pretty good place to be based to get to all these events, because especially the people who live kind of either further north or further west or further south, they're a bit limited for how many events they can go to. But it meant I could kind of go to Manchester in 2 hours, Cardiff in 2 hours, London in 2 hours, and cover all those bases. But then towards the end, for Stirling, we decided to treat ourselves, and I think for War as well actually, and go the Friday night, just to avoid, especially as I mean, I was getting pretty into trying to win Best Newcomer, so every kind of extra margin I could get. So traveling on the Friday night to then mean I didn't have an early start on Saturday morning to be a bit fresher, to try and not make mistakes in these games, became worth it for me. But yeah, so it just depends on what you're going for, but normally I'll travel on Saturday morning.
The Lords of the Imps one, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get in the car and drive up. I signed up for it without fully realizing that it was at it was in Lincoln, which is a long way away from where I live.
Yeah.
I'd also been on holiday the week before, so I got back late on the Friday night and then went to bed, got up at 4 a.m, headed off, got there, and the first 3 games went really well. And then game 4, I was just like, that's it, I'm done. I've apologized to my opponent since, like, I was not in it at all.
Yeah.
Bless them. But yeah, that's good. And then set off, we've driven there, we get to the car, we get to the event. Is there anything that you normally do kind of immediately upon arriving?
I try and find my table, get my models out, put them in warbands, and basically just get myself ready so that there's no stress. When they announce the draw, I'm pretty much ready, that I can see what the scenario is, maybe get the rule book up and just read through the scenario and the VPs for that particular sort of, if it's an objective mission or something like that, just trying to figure out exactly what the points are awarded for. And then kind of, like I said, I've already got my Might Will Fate sorted. So as soon as we then get to the table, I can kind of just swap army lists and spend a few minutes going through their list, and just kind of questioning them on what their models are and what they do. And I also would recommend writing down the Might, Will and Fate for your opponent, not necessarily for any kind of reason outside of just knowing what resources they've got available to them. So I've had it before where kind of you'll be like, oh, you've got Elrond, okay, is he 3 Might, 3 Will, 3 Fate? And they'll be like, oh yeah, he is. And I'm like, has he got any spells? I go, oh, he's got a Wrath of Brunnen. I go, okay, and I might make a little note of that, and then I'll say, is he fight 5 or 6 or 7? And they'll go, oh, he's fight 6, and I'll just jot that down next to his name. So my sheet of paper will say something like, it'll have all his Might, Will and Fate, and it might then say kind of fight 6, defense 7, strike. And I've then got those there, that because it's kind of the worst thing is you make a plan and suddenly it's just not knowing what the opponent has that catches you out, and they suddenly go, oh, I'm going to call a heroic defense, and you go, oh well, I've just put all my resources into trying to kill you this turn, I didn't know you had heroic defense. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, sorry, you never asked or whatever. Whereas, so I try and make sure at the start of the game to kind of go through all of their heroes and just try and understand what they do. Because I'm still at the stage where there's lots of armies I've never played against, just because I've only been, I say only now, I've now been to maybe 10
tournaments,
but that's still only 60 matchups. And there's still armies I've never played against.
I do. I always have their army like open in the rulebook next to me, so you can kind of flick through. Because there's always that kind of thing where you go, so if I can, do a little heroic combat round to here and get in on that person, so you then go, what fight is that guy over there again? And it kind of really just, they go, oh, well, why do you ask what fight he is? What can you do? You can do that. Hang on. And it's kind of like, you don't want to tell your opponent what you're thinking, or and things like that.
On a similar thread to that, there are definitely some times where declaring your intentions will help stop you being caught out yourself. I even do it in my last top table game against World Champion. I'm kind of talking out loud what I'm trying to do, which in a perfect world I wouldn't be, because I'm just giving him more information. But I'll be saying stuff like, okay, these guys I'm going to leave 6 inches away, and I'll get my little bamboo stick and just check that they're definitely 6 inches away. And even if they got nudged later, the fact I've said it out loud means he knows that the intention was they're 6 inches away. And if he's like, oh, I'm just in charging range, that the opponent normally lets me just kind of nudge them back, because they know that the intention was there.
That's one of the things I was going to say for in-game, is always make sure, and it's little things like, if I think I'm outside of a 10-inch charge range from your right hand cavalry, I will say, I think I'm outside of 10 inches. Do you want to check it, or are you happy? Right, cool, we're happy.
Yeah.
We're outside of 10 inches. And then if next turn he goes, I'm going to charge it, and you go, well, you told me last turn you're happy. Like, they're outside of 10. And it just saves all that kind of, my tape measure says I'm 10 and a bit in, and those little awkward things, which sour the game for everyone. You don't really want that.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Nice. What other kind of ways have you got of ensuring a win? Getting in their head.
No more on that really in specific detail. One of the points I did have down is kind of the quickest way to learn is by losing, especially to these good players. And at the end of the game, I mean, especially if you've lost, your opponent is going to be very happy to talk through all of the amazing things they did to smash you into the ground. So you should just sit there and keep asking, be like, okay, so why did you do that move on that turn, or why did you decide to do this? And they'll happily just tell you all of their secrets. And I think I basically was just trying to be a sponge at all of these events. I'd play sort of Ali, Jasmine, all of these people, Kalman, World Champion, and I'd just kind of ask and say, like, why did you do that? Why did you do that? And just kind of absorb as much as I can from whenever I lost. And that definitely helped get better quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. Always talk to your opponent afterwards. And that's why I've started doing that thing where you write down what you're using the mic for as well and things, because then you can look back and review, and that's kind of after the game and after the tournament, and working out what you've been doing and what's been working well, what's been not working well. And this guy did a really cool trick, I'm going to copy him next time. I've done that before.
Yeah.
And if you finish your game early at your events, where do you normally go? Do you head outside for a break? Do you wander around tables? What are you doing?
I basically never finish games early.
Oh.
I'm overall a fairly slow player, especially when I'm trying to be competitive, because I still just haven't played enough matchups and scenarios enough times to really know exactly what I want to do at the start. So I'll spend a lot of time thinking and a lot of time sort of preparing, and we'll normally end up finishing naturally kind of 5 to 10 minutes before the end of the game. So it's not like any of these are like being slow played or anything like that, but I'm not one of the people who kind of 1 hour into a 2-hour game has finished and won 12-0 like some of the other top table players managed to do. If I did finish early, often it would be kind of go and watch a mate's game that's still going on and stuff like that.
I find it really interesting. If I ever see someone using like a Goblin Town list, I'll always go and just kind of hang out and just watch for a little bit, just see what they do with it. Because there's always little interesting things you can pick up on from watching someone do using a very similar army, but kind of what are they going to do? What are they doing differently? Do you think you'd have done it? That kind of thing, which is quite fun. But yeah, nice. Cool. There's some good tips in there. Hopefully people have picked up a few things.
One more final tip, which is to agree with your opponent about 20 minutes to go which turn's going to be the last turn. And I think this saves people so much stress that you can have situations where you've got like 4 minutes left on the clock and one person really wants there to be another turn, another player really doesn't want there to be another turn, and you then have this really awkward dynamic where one player's rushing, one player's not. Whereas if at 20 minutes to go, you kind of agree saying, I think we can fit in this turn and 2 more, and you both just agree and be like, right, we're going to play 2 more turns after this one, and then no matter what happens, you then know where you stand from that point, and you can kind of spend your might knowing that you've got that many turns left, rather than kind of have this 5 minutes to go, like, oh, do we start another one? And one player is kind of going, oh no, there's not really much time, and the other player saying, no, we should start another one, and stuff like that.
We had the exact thing when me and your brother played at LGT.
Yeah.
We looked at it, and then it was kind of one of those things where it was playing fog of war, and we both thought we could kill the opponent's thing, so we didn't realize we both wanted one more turn. But we were both kind of like, oh, can we get another turn?
Yeah.
Should we get another turn? And we're like, yeah, we can get another turn, and go on. And then I lost. But it's all right. It's all fun.
I mean, I did have a weird encounter with that where there was it might have been at the LGT actually, where we started 20 minutes late, and we didn't realize we started 20 minutes late.
Yeah.
So we were kind of looking at the clock going, okay, so we're finishing in 10 minutes. Should we say one more turn? And we both agree, one more turn. And we both like blow all of our might points, knowing it's the final turn and all of this. And then Sam announces, oh, there's half an hour remaining. And we look at each other and we're like, oh, crap. Like we just agreed, like, and we both were just like, well, we'll just end it after this turn, because I mean, that's what we agreed, and that's what we're playing to, and it was fine because we'd had that discussion. But it was kind of interesting that we could have played another 2 or 3 turns after that. But yeah, it's just good having that communication with your opponent, deciding.
Nice. I've got some questions from the community on my phone now. I'm going to fire you away if you're okay for another 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, of course.
Some of them we've already answered. So like one of them was like, what was your first event and how did it go? But we've done that, covered that ages ago.
In a lot of detail. People are still listening by this point, and yeah, thanks for hanging in there.
They're all right. They're good eggs. They listen to us waffle on for ages normally. How has your list building, do you think, changed between the very first event and your most recent? Is there anything that you deliberately do now that you'd never even considered before and things like that?
Oh yeah, it definitely has changed. I'm trying to think of what specific examples I'd go to. I think it's knowing which models I want in lists from the start. Whereas when I'd try and write a list a couple of years ago, I'd kind of just be unsure. I'd end up with kind of 5 different lists I might take to an event, and I don't know which one I want. Whereas now I can almost know from the start, saying, okay, I know what components I want and building blocks. And when I was talking through the good list, kind of I know which order I build it up in to then try and make the points levels work. And I think I've actually got a top tip for people, which is if you have a computer or a laptop with Excel on, go and download the Lonely Night MESBG list builder. If you haven't heard of it, just go Google it, Lonely Night MESBG list builder, and it's an Excel you can download, and it is fantastic for list building. He's spent, it must have been like 5,000 hours developing this thing. It's super clever. You've got all the different lists, all the different legendary legions, and you can just start putting like ones in different boxes to say you're taking this hero with this item, and it just sums up all of the points and whether it's legal and like how many models, your bow limit, and gives you really nice summaries. And it's so easy to tinker with as well. So that would be a recommendation for people.
It's like Battlescribe, but better in every single way.
Every way. And when people in our like messenger group, some of them use Battlescribe, and they'll say, oh, how does this list look? And they'll send it through, and it'll just be like 50 lines saying Warrior of Rohan, Warrior of Rohan, Warrior of Rohan, Warrior of Rohan. And they're like, I can't even read this. Whereas the ones that the Lonely Night spreadsheet spits out are just so clean and easy to read that, yeah, if you like list building and you either, I don't know, lots of people say I love doing it by hand. So yeah, sure, it's great fun, but give it a try and you'll realize how nice it is just to be like, oh, what happens if I add 5 more of these? Okay, no, that doesn't work. Take off 3, add 2, and you can just in kind of 20 minutes play around with 1,000 permutations of your list very easily.
Is there anyone who, when you've been drawn up against them, you've kind of gone, "Ah, don't want to play that person"?
I've been lucky in the draws that I haven't been drawn up against people I don't want to be against, but the people who I would be making those noises for, Ed Ball and Jay Clare, I've still, I don't think I've had to play either. I've been on top table next to them both several times, and I can kind of see their opponents playing them and stuff. But if I'm in a tournament and they're there as well, I'm kind of there just being like, oh, not these guys. And that's almost why I don't mind when I win games by 2-0 and stuff, because I'm there like, okay, the odds of me being matched up against them, who are probably winning their games 12-0 and 10-0, are less likely.
Is there a particular model that gives you the heebie-jeebies as well whenever you see them across the table, or is it you feel like you can deal with everything now?
It depends what list I'm taking, but if I'm taking my like filthy good alliance with Galadriel in and stuff, there isn't a huge amount I'm scared of. I don't think there is a single model that I'm scared of. There must be. I'll have a think. I might answer that in 5 minutes when something comes back to me. That there are definitely armies that I don't like playing against, but I can't think of the top of my head for a single model.
That's all right.
Ballistas. Oh, there you go. The Assault on Helm's Deep Legendary Legion. If I see that and I'm like, oh, how many ballistas have you got? And they're like, oh, I've got 2. I'll be there like, no, please. Because even with Galadriel and Blinding Light, they hurt.
You're already saying that because Aaron uses them.
Yeah, and I've been on the receiving end of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to. At war I went to and like turned up and I had my like fiefdoms list that I've been doing really well with, and then I looked across here, I was like, so we got two ballistas, cool, on to the death, great, fantastic.
Yeah,
let's shuffle across the board and hope I don't die. I did. But yeah, nice, cool. I don't think there's many more that we haven't already covered, to be honest. So I think we're pretty good. If anyone's got any other questions, chuck them down in the comments and stuff, and I might send them to Rowan. I might answer them myself. He might look himself, who knows. We'll hopefully get to them. But is there anything else you wanted to chime in on with you while you're here? Anything that you?
No, I'm good. You've let me talk about myself for a long time, and I've tried to give a few tips. Hopefully, nice. Yeah, interesting stuff. Hopefully.
And yeah, if you're on the fence at all, anyone about coming down to events and things, just sign up and go to them. The community of people are really nice. I know there was a guy into the West, I think it was, who like it was his first game and he got drawn against Ali like round 1. And in other systems you might think, oh gosh, that's a scary matchup, but actually he was really nice. He walked you through the game and things like that. Like even some of the best players, most of them are at the point now where they know they'll beat you and they'll just kind of walk you through it until you get to like the top tables near the end. Everyone's really friendly. Come along to events, we'll have a great time. And don't think of it as a big scary tournament. It's just a fun day out playing some games.
Yep.
Oh, I remembered what I was going to talk to you about. When we spoke to Ali, he spoke about how he plays squash quite competitively and gets really into that. And he thinks that there's some things he can draw up from his squash experience. And we also briefly mentioned that like people like Dewey plays hockey and Will Champion plays, I can't remember Will Champion plays, but rugby, is it?
Yeah.
Rugby. You yourself, do you do any sports, athletics, anything?
Athletics. Yeah, I'm a pole vaulter.
A pole vaulter?
So, yeah, I've been doing that for sort of 10 plus years now. Sort of
How
competitively.
on earth do you get into that?
Oh, this podcast is going to go on way too long if we've gone too much of a tangent. But yeah, basically, back when I was at school, I used to do sprinting and long jumping and a bit of sort of gymnastics. And I went on a summer course just by chance for pole vault. And one of the coaches in the area asked me to start training with him, and it went from there.
Nice. And is there anything that you think, because do you compete quite well at it, or do you just do it for fun?
When I was younger, I came 4th in Europe. So
fairly well.
I did pretty good when I was younger, and in the last sort of 5 years or so, I've been dealing with lots of injuries that have been sort of limiting how competitive I can be at it. Which is, it's been nice having Middle Earth as my kind of competitive outlet while I'm dealing with various injuries and not able to do as much pole vaulting as I wanted to be doing. But yeah, there's definitely that kind of competitive and under pressure element that I've definitely had experience in from the athletics, being in stadiums, lots of people watching, and sort of third attempts at heights to try and win stuff. That comes across that kind of Middle Earth can be a lot, kind of approach it a lot more relaxed. And also there's also, I think, one of the skills which takes some time to get used to is knowing where to spend the effort. So when I'm playing games against my brother, it's often very frustrating because he'll spend ages lining up his models to be exactly the right distance. And I'm sat opposite just thinking, I'm not charging this turn. Like you don't need to spend any effort on your models right now because I'm not charging, but he doesn't know that yet. Then he doesn't know where to put the energy and the effort. And I think that's kind of something that comes from sort of playing lots of games and high pressure things. It's just knowing when to strike and stuff like that, and knowing which moves are going to be critical and which ones aren't. I think there's parallels from the sport from that.
Don't tell anyone, but Middle Earth is actually a resource management game. It's not a strategy game. It is all about preserving your might and using your might at the key moments and things like that. Not about slamming two water models into each other and hoping that yours win. But don't tell anyone that. That's our special secret.
Yeah, definitely.
That's something I learned very, very quickly on the tournament world. Because I was like, I'm going to take my big, strong thing and throw it at your big, strong thing, and I'm going to win. And then they went, well, you'll win that fight, but I'm going to win this game. But yeah, there's another last minute top tip for you.
Yes, yeah, might management. If you're not sure whether to spend the might, probably don't.
Yeah. The amount of people I see, like sometimes, because I use Golden Town a lot, we've got loads at might normally. And I'm just like, I'm going to call a right move. And they go, why? I'm like, I'm going to call one. And then they go, oh, I'm going to counter it because I assume you have something clever planned. And like, that was it. It's just to make you use yours because I've got 12 might and you've got 5. So, little things like that. Crafty. And that's why I don't win events. But yeah, brilliant. No, thanks for stopping by with us. If you're still here, definitely hit the like button because you deserved it. Ring the little subscription bell. There'll be loads of links to everything we talked about down below. GBHL, Guardians of Wiltshire. I'll try and put a Lonely Night down there as well if I remember.
Yeah. I'll send you a link to it.
Thank you. I do have it. I use it sometimes.
Perfect.
So yeah, it's just if I remember to put it in, basically. And yeah, thanks for coming by with us. Is there anything last minute you want to plug or anything while you're here? Or
no, yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good fun.
Shout out my mum. What, Teddy? All right. Bye, guys.